and welcome to the second episode of the Sheep and Stitches podcast. I've faffed around for long enough, so I think we need to just go for it. My name is Susie and I'm from Devon, but now located up here in Dumfriesshire. And this podcast is basically a bit of an exploration of all the woolly things that I like to play with. As you can see, there's a bit of a pile going on here. It's not the prettiest, but it's what I've got. So I'm very passionate about natural fibres, using yarn that's local to us, and do some spinning, and I also work with sheep as well, growing up on a sheep farm. So kind of exploring a bit about, I just want to bring us closer to the fabric and the fibres we use, that it's not just some mass-produced, you buy it in a shop and that's how it always is, but actually think about the properties of the fibre, where it comes from, what fibre's good for what. So yeah, that is my little rambling introduction. I talked last episode about how I'd quite like to have a theme to my podcast, or kind of a theme to each episode. This one is a little bit of a handspun theme going on, but not massively. My next podcast is going to be talking about this big blanket which I'm working on, which is all handspun and different sheep breeds, and I'm going to dig into kind of a bit about sheep breeds, because I know some people have said they're interested in that. So that will be next time, but this time I just wanted to talk about a lot of breed specific yarns that I'm working with, and my first test knit, which is really exciting. So I'm going to start with what I'm wearing. This is a mashup of the Origami sweater by Kjeldsen and the Hekla by Thea Colman. So it's an Aran weight sweater. The structure and the kind of stitch count and all of that is from the Origami, and I knit like the sleeve up to about here-ish about 3 times, with different stripe patterns, and it just wasn't right for me with the yarn I'd chosen, but I really wanted to use the yarn I had. So I had knit the Hekla from Handspun, which is where this colourwork pattern comes from, a couple of years ago, and it turned out to be too small for me. So I gave it to my sister, but I love the pattern, so I thought I would use that in this one instead, as a kind of mashup of the two. So I now kind of have a Hekla, which is what I wanted in the first place. So the yarn is sort of grey up here, and for the cuffs, you can see that. Red bubble on there. I've worn this an awful lot since I finished it, maybe 2 months ago. It's been a bit of a gap since my last podcast as well. I didn't publish it as soon as I'd filmed, so there was a bit of a lag, but anyway, so this grey is Hawkshaw sheep's Shetland and Hebridean Aran weight yarn. I think I talked about it, I got it at the Perth Festival of Yarn. I think I talked about it last time, in the colour Bonfire Smoke. I think this is kind of the end of this yarn now. Sue tends to do limited edition type yarns, I think, depending on what's available, which I really like. So that's cool. And then this creamy white is a white Ryeland yarn from Auldgirth Steading, who are also really local to me here. And also the brown yarn is another Ryeland yarn, from Turnacre Ryeland, who I just found I was searching online a while ago for different kind of naturally coloured British but they sometimes have handspun available, I think, but mainly they've got this lovely kind of range of 4 different colours of Aran weight Ryeland wool. They sent a little shade card with the other colours when I ordered. I should have bought it, but I forgot. So really enjoyed working with all of these yarns. That it's such a warm jumper, especially with the kind of little bit of a not cowl neck, what would you call it? Mock turtleneck maybe. yeah, and it's got an I-cord bind off. I keep looking the wrong way. Look this way. It's got a bit of an I-cord bind off around the neckline. It's bottom up, which I'd never done an I-cord bind off before, and I really, really like it. So I think that's going to be happening again. Yeah, so really enjoying this jumper. It's super warm, especially with that really cold weather we had back just before Christmas in the UK. Yeah, so that's my first finished object, and I'm wearing 2 pairs of hand-knit socks because it's not that cold, but I just fancied being cozy. Yeah, one of which is the snowshoe ones that I knit from my Handspun. I'll just show you. Ooh. Probably can't really see because it's so dark, but Handspun yarn. I talked about them in my last episode. So yeah. So now I'm going to talk about some finished objects I've got from this pile over here. Now, last time I shared that I was working on some mittens, and these are now finished. These are kind of, it was a free pattern of a fold down cuff mitten. I knit the cuffs are nice and long, so nice and warm, and you can have them folded down or up so that most of your hand is covered. You could knit it so your whole hand was covered, I guess, if you want it all blowing out there. Yeah, so these I knit out of West Yorkshire Spinners Jacob DK, and I don't actually wear them as much as I thought I would. I am learning. I know that I don't like hats with a folded brim for myself because I find it just too much, like, it's just too much fabric and too much. If I want a warm hat, it needs to be a thick hat as opposed to a folded brim hat or a colourwork one for myself personally. But yeah, I have worn these mittens, but just not as much as I thought because I find especially the thumb a little bit bulky if I'm trying to do things. So yeah. What else was I going to say? I cannot remember what the pattern was called, but I'll write everything, I'll note down below so that you can have a look if you're interested. So that was them. And my next finished object is, this is where we go a bit handspun heavy. You may remember from my last podcast, if you saw it, I had spun up some Dutch spotted fleece that I had picked up on a farm that I was working on. So throughout my time at uni in the summer, I worked for a local shearing contractor. So I was wool handling, so like packing the fleeces ready to go off to whatever marketing board that they were going to, and also did some shearing. So this was from one of the places where we worked, and the colours I just find so exciting. Like I did nothing colour management wise other than just blend it all in together on the drum carder, and off I went. And I spun a kind of DK weight yarn and then knit it up on 3 and 3.5 mil needles, so this is really quite a dense hat. Now I've just told you I don't like folded brim hats myself, so this one is actually for my boyfriend who is currently in Australia shearing sheep, and he will be back in a month or so, which is quite exciting. And so, having gotten used to the warm in Australia, I think he will appreciate a nice, super warm hat. So yeah, I've got a big hair clip in, and it's a bit big for me, so I will not put it on. But yeah, I'm really excited to give him this hat, and hope he really enjoys it. So yeah. And next, I've got a handspun thing that I did for me. So I spun this yarn at some point last summer. I'd always planned, I spun it for the project. I do a real mixture of spinning for projects and spinning just to spin. The longer I spin, I think the more I spin for projects, but I think that's mostly just because I'm now more able to spin the weight that I want to spin. I'm really not a technical spinner. If you want a podcast that talks about spinning in a more technical way, then Stitches and Starlight. I think I've got that right. Tashi at Stitches and Starlight, who is also a fairly new podcaster. She's released her first podcast the same week I released my first podcast, and she now has like loads of them, which is so cool. I'm not comparing. I don't think that's healthy. We've all got different kind of levels of energy and different kind of amounts of spare time to commit to things. But yeah, she's got some really, really cool podcasts talking a lot more about the specifics of spinning and grist and all these technical things that I would like to delve into, but I haven't yet. But there's time for that. Yeah, so long story short, I spun a roughly Aran weight yarn for the Berlin cowl by Helga Isager. So this strange looking garment, blowing out again, is that better? It goes something like this. You'll discover I'm weirder than more podcasts I put out. What am I actually trying to say here? This is the Berlin cowl by Helga Isager. It is knit from the bottom up. So you knit kind of a back piece and a front piece, and then you join them together with a saddle shoulder, which I've got one top that is saddle shoulder on. I love the fit of it, so I had high hopes for this, and it has been successful. And then you just knit this really nice long. I literally just knit until around of yarn. I've got like this teeny tiny ball left, and then you do a kind of sew and bind off at the top. Yeah, and it's a really nice cozy. Like if it's really cold, I have it up so it's up to my nose, or just down. And when it's cold out, so I work outside as a vet. Oh, the sun's coming through the clouds. I work outside a lot. I'm a large animal vet. So I'll put this on, and then I put my jumper on over the top of it, so that this is all kind of held in and snug, and it means you don't get that horrible gap between your jumper and your scarf that all the cold wind goes in. So this has been a really, really useful knit. It's actually a blend. I hope that's actually showing you the colours nicely. Yeah. There we go. That's roughly shows them. It's a blend of I've got it written down here, let's have a look at it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it is a blend of 4 different fleeces that I had. Well, I didn't all have full fleeces, but 4 different sheep anyway. So the kind of white flecks and some of the dark is a Dorset cross something, I don't know, but it was a mainly black sheep with a bit of white in her. She was a Dorset cross. And the brown is, the brown you can see, is from a brown Shetland, which I talked about spinning with that fleece again in my last podcast. And then a lot of the bulk of the grey and the black in here is from a black Blueface Leicester sheep, who this is the same fleece as it. And then the last I have in here is some Black Welsh Mountain fibre, which I actually got from Fibre Hub, who are an online shop that I used a lot when I first started spinning. I would really recommend them actually for getting British breed specific tops for spinning. So yeah, that is my very well worn Berlin cowl. I am planning on doing an episode at some point talking about all of the different kind of outsidey garments I have. I've got quite a few that I wear for work on the farm, so this will probably go to that. And I've got quite a lot of things I want to share in that respect, kind of thinking about making knitting a really practical, like still fun and do what makes you happy, but thinking about what garments are actually practical for your life and how we can make wool an everyday thing, not just as special occasions, which I know quite a lot of people are doing that more and more now, which I think is quite exciting. But anyway, that is all my pile of finished objects. I did quite a bit of gift knitting too for Christmas, but obviously I've given them away now, and I'm not going to talk about them just because I can't talk about everything. I don't think you should feel you have to share everything if you're doing a podcast. But I use Ravelry a lot, I'm SuzieCrafts on Ravelry, it'll be written down below, and I quite enjoy kind of documenting what I've made on there, so if you're interested, Christmas things are on there. What's next? Let's talk about my whips. So my works in progress. This is actually a finished object in itself. I made this bag, and just a very simple lined drawstring bag with a wool pull cord. Things just fell off the sofa. Right. Oh dear. The sun's come out again. This is going to be a messy, crazy episode, but that's just me, so we're going to deal with it. Right. So this is... I have a feeling I shared there's needles everywhere, and it looks a mess. I think I shared this yarn that I bought it at the Perth Yarn Festival last time I podcasted. It's this Lammermuir wool Hillsfoot blend 4-ply. So it's a Scottish wool. It's a blend of Shetland and Scotland yarn, and it is really, really cozy. It's lovely. Yeah. So I'm knitting the Ujo, not sure how to say it, top tunic. It's kind of a long short sleeve top by Ankestrik, and I really love Ankestrik's patterns. This is the first one I've knit, and it's not the most straightforward, but it's done in a way that makes it so it's going to fit right, and that's what I quite like. So yeah, it's kind of a raglan, but it's not just a basic straightforward raglan. There's kind of staggered to make it fit right. So I have just split it for the sleeves, and I am going to block this before I go any further, just because I have tried it on and it does fit, but I don't know if it's a bit too snug, so I just want to block it and see if it grows at all, as to whether I do need to go back and add a few more rounds, like go back to the split and add a few more rounds onto the yoke before I go any further. So yeah, that's the job to do, to block that, but I'm really enjoying this fabric. It's like, it's not perfectly even, the yarn is kind of neppy, just a little bit. It's hard to see in this half-used skein. I've took the needles off because I've only got one pair of 3.25mm needle tips, and they're on another project. So anyway, it needs to be on pause for the blocking, so that's fine. So yeah, really, really pleased with how this is knitting up. And because it is mainly just stockinette in the round, it does actually grow quite quickly despite it being very fine gauge. Yeah, and I really want to be able to wear this, so as soon as that's blocked, we're going to be getting going on that again. So, let's put that over there. Perfect. I've got, this might be a bad idea, but I'm going to do it. I've got a sleepy little friend on the sofa next to me, hiding in his crochet blanket. I'll put in, this is so unprofessional moving the camera halfway through a podcast, but I think it worked. I will put in some clips at the end of my little sleepy four-legged friend here, so you can actually see what he looks like beyond just a black blob with orange eyebrows. So what fell off? My next whips fell off the sofa. Was there ever a more chaotic podcast? So next, I talked about my 3.25mm needles being somewhere else. Here they are. I am making another pair of Snowshoe Socks by Emily Foden from her beautiful Knits About Winter book. I think these are my favourite kind of go-to boot sock. They're held using 2 strands of 4-ply held together. And these are for my sister for her birthday, which is very soon, so I need to actually finish them. Yeah, so for gift knit socks, I tend to use like something that's machine washable, just because I would rather know that someone's actually going to be able to have a hand knit item and just be able to chuck it in the wash. Socks anyway, kind of jumpers and things, I do like to, I don't quite have it in me to knit a superwash jumper. I think I would lose all motivation. But socks, I think for people that are, especially if you've only got a couple of pairs of wool socks, you know, I think there's a place for kind of machine washable wool. Yeah, I personally don't like wearing it, but my sister loves these socks. She's got one pair of them already, so yeah. So they're it's actually all yarn that I've got in Ravelry Destashes, which is a really cool function on Ravelry that you can go on and, like, if you're able to use Ravelry, there's a bit you can kind of buy, and find people's stashes that they're willing to sell, basically. So this is a mix of, all the variegated colours are abstract cat yarns. I bought a couple of kind of leftover balls she had. I've got a few more as well, and I really like the colours, especially this one. And then this I'm holding together all the way through with one and the other. And this, I think, is Dye for Wool, who I don't know anything about them, I just found them in the Ravelry Destash. Yeah. So one thing I will say, my second sock is done the leg, and I've just started my heel flap. So they're heel flap and gusset top down pattern. One thing I'll say about knitting superwash socks is that if you want a superwash sock to last, in my experience, it needs to have nylon in, which I think is quite rubbish because I don't want to be using plastic in my knitting. But I would much rather make a sock that's going to last than knit some in all superwash wool and it wear through. So when you superwash a wool, it kind of, so wool naturally, the reason it's grippy and the reason it felts is that it's got tiny little scales on the wool fibres, which when agitated they interlock together, so that's felting. So obviously when you put them in the washing machine, things shrink, if you're not on a proper wool cycle. And if you just have superwash wool, especially something like a superwash merino, which merino is so fine that it wears through really quickly, then you just wear through the socks because there's nothing to hold the wool together, and it's just a kind of pointless exercise because you've then spent hours making a sock that wears through in no time at all. So these ones, this is just superwash Blueface Leicester, and this is just superwash Blueface Leicester. So I've just used that for the leg. Let's have the finished one to make more sense. So the leg of the sock is just wool, and that's fine because the leg doesn't get too much wear, does it? But this one, for the foot, is a 80% Blueface Leicester, 20% nylon blend. So I know that this foot is actually going to last on the sock, because she's a farmer, she wears wellies all the time, so yeah, she wants some actual good boot socks that are going to last and not fall apart, and her not have to go, Susie, can you fix them please, every few weeks, months, however often. So yeah, that is a lot of waffle about socks, but yeah, I personally am going to talk about this project here later, like no nylon, non-superwash socks, but there's a place for superwash socks, if you knit them in the right way, to my mind, and depending on who they're for. Yeah, so next project. Ooh, sorry, needles are clacking. This is, yeah, so this is my kind of final normal whip. And I, for Christmas, got a hot water bottle, so I thought it was about time I should have brought the cover, so the actual hot water bottle, so I could sit the cover on it, because that would look so much nicer, but here we are. Maybe next time I'll show you it finished. And anyone that has watched a lot of knitting podcasts will probably recognise this pattern. So this is the Druid's Hearth hot water bottle cover by the lovely Cat of Heather and Hops, though I believe she's in the process of changing her kind of YouTubey name. Apologies. A tractor just drove by with a very loud rally trailer on, so I'll edit that out. Anyway, yeah, so this is the Druid's Hearth hot water bottle cover, and I am such an incredibly slow cable knitter that I just have gotten about halfway and it's paused. I need to finish it because I really, really like it, but I love the pattern and it's not difficult, it's just I personally find it really hard to get into a flow with knitting cables, and I like how they look, I just don't tend to knit them because this happens. Yeah, so the yarn I'm using is John Arbon Textiles Devonia, and it's split into two balls because it's the 4-ply and it's a DK weight pattern, so I'm just holding two together, and yeah, it's coming out lovely and it's pretty soft, and I love John Arbon's way with colour, so it's not like a flat colour, don't know if that's, yeah, but it's beautiful. So in the interest of breeds, the yarn is 50% Exmoor Blueface. So an Exmoor Blueface is basically a type of what we call a mule. So in the sheep industry, there's a lot of kind of strategic breeding for what sheep suit what landscapes, so that we can kind of have the right sheep for the right landscape. So on Exmoor, where the Exmoor horn sheep come from, it's pretty rough and gets pretty wild in the winter, even though it's down south in Devon. It's quite high, it's by the coast. So the Exmoor horn is a kind of Exmoor's tough hill sheep. And then you've got the Blueface Leicester, which is what a lot of people will have heard of. And they are our typical, like, we use them to cross with a hill sheep to produce a mule. It's called a mule, or an Exmoor Blueface is one type of mule, Exmoor mule. And that sheep is then a kind of nice blend of the Blueface Leicester ram. That breed is a very maternal, motherly breed, produces plenty of milk and produces a really lovely fleece, which is these days in the British sheep industry sadly not a massive priority because the wool doesn't make very much money, but we want to change that. We're working to change that. Keep supporting British wool, please. And then the Exmoor horn is a really tough, hardy sheep, or kind of whatever kind of hill sheep. So most commonly it will be a Scotch Blackface or a Swaledale to make a mule. So that cross gives you kind of in between of the motherly, milky ewe and the tough. How I learnt it as a child was that the father's breed is good at being a mother and the mother's breed is good at being tough, which I think is quite cool. Anyway, so much waffle about sheep breeds, you're probably like, this is irrelevant, why are you telling me? But anyway, yeah, so that's the first breed. 50% is an Exmoor Blueface, and the next is 30% Blueface Leicester, and then it's 20% Wensleydale, which is a Longwool breed, so that will actually help make this a really nice sturdy yarn. And yeah, so it's 100% Devon wool, which makes me happy being from Devon, and spun in South Molton, which is kind of like my hometown. That's where my family are originally from, that area. So yeah, that's that one. In my little, for once she's got a fancy project bag. I'm a John Arbon Mill member, so that's my little project bag from that. Okay, so on to my last whip, and whoopsie, my last whip and my first test knit. So, if you don't follow Mary of Mary Digital Makes on Instagram, and she's got a podcast herself here on YouTube. Please go follow her, she's awesome. So she has designed a couple of sock patterns so far, and they're really beautiful. I haven't knit any of them yet, but her latest test knit of the nesty socks I signed up for and got accepted, which is really exciting. They are a toe-up colourwork sock with a colourwork heel, with the idea that the socks will be a lot more durable, because then you've got a double thickness on the heel and the whole sole of the foot and all the way up the foot. It's only the toes and the cuffs that are a single colour, so they should be a really nice durable sock, which, yeah, is quite exciting to me. So hence I wanted to sign up. So Mary has written it that you hold the toe with, I've just done a toe so far, so no exciting colourwork to look at yet, I'm afraid, but next time hopefully we'll have some more progress. The toe and the cuffs are written to be with a 4-ply held with a mohair, so even though they're not colourwork, they're still nice and tough. And I am using all naturally dyed yarn for these socks. Whoops. Anyway, so the toes are made from this beautiful yarn. Get sorted with this thing. That's better. Which is from Gull Rock Fibres. So this is the first yarn I've ever bought from Gull Rock Fibres, but I have been admiring them online a lot. I bought this yarn at FiberQuest, which is a small fibre festival at Fernhill Farm in Somerset on the Mendip Hills. Fernhill Farm is amazing. I'll share a link to their website because honestly they're amazing. Anyway, but this is, yeah, Gull Rock Fibres, so it's 75% Blueface Leicester, 25% Gotland, all British wool, in 4-ply weight. And I'm so glad that I hand wound this ball of wool, because the feel and the texture of this yarn, it's just beautiful. It's really lovely. I really want a jumper made out of this now, which is an issue because I don't need to buy yarn right now. I don't have a stupid amount of wool, but I do have plenty. That's no judgment on people that do have loads and loads of yarn. It's just not something I feel I need to do. I'd like to feel that I can, yeah, knit all of the yarn that I currently own within a reasonable time period. Just personally, I don't feel I need more than that, as much as I'm tempted to. Anyway, so this is naturally dyed, I'm not sure with, but the colour is called Bath Stone. So it really is the same colour as the beautiful stone buildings in the city of Bath. And then I'm holding with it this, it's a somewhat mystery mohair. My lovely friend Alice of Wool Matters, she's in Somerset too, and I went to Bristol Uni, so I lived in Somerset despite being from Devon for a good few years. And so this is naturally dyed as well. It is, I think it's 100% mohair, I might be wrong, but I'm not sure what she dyed it with, but it's kind of a light fingering, maybe heavy lace weight. I just have this one ball of it that she let me have. So it's becoming, yeah, toes and cuffs for these socks, and then I'm pretty sure I'm going to hold this with, I'll have loads left, so I'm going to hold this with something else to make an entire sock out of this, which will be very cool. Then my main colours, my two kind of colours for the colourwork sock, are more Wool Matters yarn. So this is Southwest 4-ply, which is spun on the same base as, so it's Devon wool, it's the same base as this. Exactly the same blend of Exmoor Blueface, Blueface Leicester and Wensleydale. But she dyed it with these beautiful kind of bundle dye technique. So there's all sorts of different colours in there, and I'm really excited to use this instead of a plain base colour like this. Bits of pink, bits of yellow. I have a feeling there's bits of green or something in here as well, or maybe that was the other skein I had. Tiny bit of blue there. But yeah, Alice's dyeing skills are insane, and please go buy her yarn from either Alternate Universe or No Frills Knitting. And then this is not actually meant to be a sock yarn, but I have used it for toes on a sock before, and it's holding up really well, and I really like how it works as a sock yarn. I think it's probably the fact it's got the Wensleydale in it, so the Longwool makes it stronger. And it's not really tightly spun, but it's reasonably tightly spun, and it's worsted spun, which makes it a stronger yarn as well. So I'm quite keen to use this for socks in the future. And then this is Alice's actual sock yarn, which is from Fernhill Fibre, who I just mentioned, based in Somerset, so it's a local yarn to her, and they are regenerative farming, so this is regeneratively farmed wool. I talked a bit about regenerative farming in my last podcast. I'll not bore you all again, but basically it's a way of farming, a kind of a mindset and practice of farming where you really work with the land in order to restore the soil and farm kind of the way nature intended, which is really exciting. Anyway, this is a beautiful skein of Alice's sock yarn, which is Romney cross Shetland sheep, and I've worked with the sheep. They're really cool, really tough sheep for living up on the Mendips, but also produce this beautiful soft fibre because they have actually been bred with fibre in mind, as well as their performance and ability to cope on the farm. And this colour is amazing. I think, so this doesn't have a label or anything, because again I bought it from Alice when I went to visit her, so she hadn't actually gotten to labelling it yet. But I think it's called Pink Dream or something like that is the colourway. I know that it's not a one-off, she's done a few other ones of the same colourway, but obviously being hand-dyed and naturally dyed, none of them are exactly the same. But yeah, this is going to be my kind of main colour. So those two together, I think. It won't be as much contrast maybe as if I'd used just the one colour, but I'm excited to see how it knits up. So yeah, that is super excited to get on with this test knit. And really excited to see how the socks are and how they wear, being all wool and a bit of mohair. Yeah. And then I think just the last thing I wanted to share about was a knitting plan I have. So my next jumper that I want to make, which it's quite unusual for me to be knitting a kind of popular recent garment that's been designed recently. That was not a very coherent sentence, never mind. But I am planning on knitting the Care Sweater by Rebecca of the Crayabella Knitting Podcast. I've been wanting to make myself a fairly long kind of jumper that I can wear with leggings to keep you warm, like all the way down. Not crazy long, but kind of longer than your kind of hip length. And I wanted to make it in natural colours, not in a kind of light grey, because I'm knitting my Yujo in this kind of, well, very similar to this light grey. And then I've also got my East Wind jacket, which is in a lighter grey as well. So I wanted something a bit darker that I could wear with them and it not look a bit daft. So I made this teeny tiny little swatch. That's not the actual pattern, but it's just some colour work to test the colours. And I think that's showing up quite nicely. So I really like grey, as you may have figured. And I really like breed specific yarns. So let's talk about this one first, because I bought this first. So this is some more low Auldgirth Steading yarn, local to me, in Dumfriesshire. So this is Gotland, it's a DK Gotland, and it's got this beautiful, I don't know if you can actually see it, maybe get a bit of an idea, but Gotland has a beautiful halo to it, and I'm really excited to see how this goes knit up, and really would love to make something else from this yarn, kind of with it as the main colour, not just as my contrast colour. Anyway, so yeah, that's my contrast colour, and then my main colour is more Hawkshaw sheep, from the lovely Sue, and this is dark grey yarn, so we'll blur out. That's pretty accurate, I think. So this is a blend of 70% Dassenkop fleece and 30% Shetland fleece. So the Dassenkop is from the Annandale flock, it says, which is local. And then Shetland is from Sue's own Shetland sheep, which she keeps on the hills, as Shetlands were meant to be. So Dassenkop is, a lot of farmers would refer to it, in the UK anyway, the kind of British name as it would be badger face texel. So I don't really know much about their wool, other than the fact that this skein is mostly Dassenkop and it's beautiful. The Shetland will definitely add softness, but it's a nice woolly wool without being really scratchy, or that's my thoughts as a person that wears a lot of woolly wool. Dassenkop, yeah, they're a pretty chunky sort of sheep. If you've heard of texels, then you probably can picture them but dark coloured. Though there's also blue texels, which are basically an all black texel with a kind of bluey mottledy face, or the body can be kind of mottledy. I'll put some pictures in of, here we are. I might not be able to do this, I might just have to flash them on screen afterwards, but a white texel, a blue texel, and a badger face texel, which is a Dassenkop. That's the kind of, I think it's Dutch name for them. These are going to be my two colours for my Chaos sweater. This is a DK weight yarn, but it's been worsted spun. It's not particularly plump, though I'm sure it's going to bloom with blocking and use. And then this one, it's actually supposedly a 4-ply, but it's semi-worsted spun, so it's not as sleek as a worsted yarn, and the wool in it, Shetland is a nice bouncy wool, and I can imagine, knowing what texel fleece is like, the Dassenkop will be as well. And it's 300 metres per 100 grams, so most 4-plies are around 350 to 400 metres per 100 grams. So this is kind of on the heavier side of 4-ply, verging on a sport weight. And I know that one of Rebecca's samples is knit in a sport weight yarn, so my little swatch, I need to make a bigger swatch. This was just a colour test really. I need to make a bigger swatch and test my gauge to make sure I'm making the right size, but I've got plenty of yarn, and I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, so I'm really excited. Now I'm talking about it, I'm really excited to make this now, but I do need to prioritise the test knit socks and the gift knit socks, although I'm enjoying knitting both of them, but yeah, now I want to make my jumper. Anyway, all of the things, so much knitting, so much wool. I seem to have shown you more balls of wool than actual knitting today. No, that's not true. Anyway, thank you for listening to my great, chaotic, random ramblings about wool and about sheep. And thank you for coming back if you watched my last podcast. And yeah, it's really, really exciting to actually be able to share the woolly things I'm doing. Yeah, and I will speak to you again very soon. Hopefully a lot sooner than the gap between the first podcast and this podcast. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you again. Bye!